Hey everybody, I wanted to share one of the key elements of instructional theory that I use around motivation. So this is how to keep your students engaged, connected, and interested in what you're talking about and how to re-perk up their attention if you happen to have lost it. So I take these motivational tips from John Keller, who is an educational theorist, and it's called the ARCS theory, A-R-C-S, ARCS. And I want to break it down for you because I use these tips all the time when I'm teaching, and they really, really work. And they help your students stay connected to both the content and to you. So let's start with A in ARCS, which is attention. So attention is how I capture someone's engagement right off the top when I'm teaching. So it could be something like, I remember the first time I saw a dead body. It could be something that is kind of out of the blue and sort of shocks them out of their kind of habitual thought pattern and gets them engaged back again in the moment. It could be a personal story. It could be some sort of contradictory idea, like what I do in my anatomy of the knee training is I say something like, flexing the foot to protect the knee is often touted as this great solution, but actually it can be harmful. And now today you're gonna find out why, right? So I try to grab their attention by saying something kind of controversial, offering a different point of view. Another way to get their attention is to get them to engage with the material on their own. So a journal exercise or offering a group discussion question, something that really helps them to kind of connect into the moment and what you're talking about. So jokes, humor can be great, but use it judiciously, my friends. Humor can be great, telling a joke, sharing a personal story, all this stuff can really help you with A, attention. So let's move on to R, relevance. Oh, actually, before we do, I'm going to tell you one little thing. A facilitator that I watched recently got students' attention by throwing candy at them in the middle of her training session. So there are lots of ways to get your students perked back up. Having them stand up and move around the room can be another way to kind of shake things up. All right, relevance. Now, R for relevance. This one is so important, especially if you are teaching adults. If you're teaching adults, then their time is incredibly precious and they need to know, like, what's in it for me? How is this going to be relevant to what I'm trying to do, to my goals, to my values, to my intentions, to what I most deeply, deeply want? So relevance is incredibly important because it gives them a reason to be there. So one way to create relevance for your students is to share with them how what you're about to share with them, your training, is going to improve their lives and their ability to do what they want to do. So for example, again, I'll use anatomy of the knee. When I teach this in my teacher training, I'll say something like, protecting your students from injury is incredibly important. And yoga uses so many hip openers that the knee is often at risk. By understanding the anatomy of the knee, as we do it today, you are going to be in a better position to be an incredibly informed teacher, protect your students from injury, and understand where they're coming from if they're working with something in their knee. And so they're like, oh my gosh, that's relevant to what I want to do. I want to be a safe yoga teacher. I want to be an informed yoga teacher. It's a little bit like, I call it the hook. It's like, this is how this is going to be important to you. This is why it's important that you know this information. Relevance, R. And I also like to make it really relevant to things that they already know. And we'll see in a moment, this can really help to increase their confidence too. But when I teach, I try to draw upon the students' prior knowledge. See, we all walk around with this kind of mind map in our head, like you can imagine like a mansion of information. Now, when I draw upon a student's prior knowledge, I'm sort of pointing them in the direction of where some of this information already lives in that big mansion of theirs. I'm like, go to this room. So, for example, when I'm teaching sequencing in a teacher training, I will usually start off by trying to draw upon what they know already as students. So I'll say something like, what makes a well-structured class? And you can create some prompting questions to help them along the way. But it's like, why don't we start class in wheel? What do you want to? What kind of environment do you want to create when the students first come into class? How should the wave of the class feel? How should the intensity of the class feel? Why don't we just like have students do wheel pose and then walk out? Like, why is the closing important? And by drawing upon their prior knowledge, not only do we increase their confidence, which we're going to see is important, but we also help them to place this new information into a structure they already have in their heads. And this can make it easier for them to recall the information and to relate it to what they already know. So relevance is a huge one. I use it all the time, usually at the top of the training in the hook. Okay, ARC, A-R-C, confidence, right? So confidence is creating a feeling in your students that, oh my gosh, they can do it. And there's a few different ways to do that. As we just saw, using and drawing on their prior knowledge can be a great way to create confidence for your students. Again, like, what have you experienced in class? What do you think the benefits of this pose are? We're showing them that they already know so much. And that can, I already know this. I've got some of this under my belt already. I should be here in this training room learning to become a teacher, right? Another way that you can create confidence in your students is by really outlining clearly what they need to know. This means as a trainer, we have to get organized. I have to create a syllabus. I have to have learning objectives. I have to share those with my students. Now, obviously, if you're creating a workshop or something smaller, you don't always need to create like a massive plan, but it's nice if you come in and you say, hey, everybody, this is what we're going to do this afternoon. We're going to do a little practice. We're going to look at some principles, and we're going to see how those principles integrate into the practice. Whatever it might be. Even a little bit of structure helps the student have more confidence in the process and an understanding of where you're leading them. I'm not a fan of the mysterious teacher, right, who comes in and is like, I'm just creating an experience and you will come along with me. That's really cool if you just want people to feel something or experience something, but if you're trying to teach them something, education, that is not going to be so effective. Now, if you're running a big program, like a big teacher training, this means you need a syllabus, you need a schedule, you need to actually tell them on day one what they're gonna have to do to succeed on day 24 or at the end of your training. So this means that we as trainers need to be planned, and we need to know what our expectations are for our students so that we can very clearly relate those expectations to them so they can be successful. Confidence. The student is confident that they have the skills they need to embark on this process. Part of that as trainers also means that we need to be aware of what our assumptions are. So a lot of times, I do this all the time as a trainer, right? I have students who are sitting in front of me and I'm like, oh, like Parshvakonasana to Ardha Chandrasana. And they're like, we don't know what those poses are yet, right? So it's to be aware when I walk in the room as an expert and you walk in the room as an expert, what assumptions are we making about what they might already know? Because without meaning to, we might undercut our students' confidence by speaking to things that they don't know yet. So we need to be clear. In order to create confidence for our students, we need to be clear about what they need to know before they arrive, what I'm going to do if they don't know that, and how I can help them really get to the end where I want them to be, so that they feel like they have been built up along the way rather than torn down. This relates to another principle that we call scaffolding. Scaffolding is when I give students support to do something, and then I gradually take the support away as they get better and better and better at doing that thing. But we don't want to start them off with nothing, right? So for example, here's just a quick example of scaffolding. I might give a student a script for how to teach a pose, right? That they can use. And then I ask them to, maybe the next time they teach it, I give them just like the bullet points for the principles that they're teaching. Hey, get them into general form, teach the primary actions, teach the risk factors, right? So I've taken away some of their language from there, but I'm still giving them something that they can follow along. And then finally, I might just, say, teach the pose. So we want to give them the resources that they need and then gradually pull those like the training wheels off. But don't pull them off too fast, otherwise their confidence will deflate and they'll feel like they can't succeed. So confidence. Oh, one more. This is a pro tip, you guys, for facilitation. To create confidence in my students, I always affirm them. So I always appreciate where they're coming from. In my class, there's no wrong answer. I mean, the content might be wrong. I look at someone, I say, what's this bone? And someone says, femur. Now, I know as a trainer that that's incorrect. Like, we know that. But rather than say like, no, that's wrong, instead I'm gonna say, I see where you're coming from, because the correlating bone in the thigh is the femur, and they're similar. They're the first bone off the body, right? But actually in the arm, it's called the humorous, or I'll say, can anyone help us out with what that is? But I want to acknowledge their efforts, because here's the thing with your students is that they're really trying hard for the most part, and they want to be there, and they're doing the best that they can. But a lot of times they're going to miss what you're saying. Just a fact of life, because when they get a new piece of information, remember that mansion I talked about, they're running with that new piece of information into their own mansion. They're trying to stick it somewhere. They're like, where does this fit? How does this relate to what? Oh my gosh, I did this in class last week. Like, they're chewing on what you're giving them, so they might miss the next thing that you say. So creating confidence in your students requires a little bit of patience, affirmation, and repetition of information. So I'm also a fan of repeating things, summing things up so that your students go, okay, I get the important points. Confidence. Finally, the last of our pillars, ARCS, ARCS, is an S, satisfaction. And this is very similar to confidence in my world. So satisfaction means that they are satisfied with the training experience. So part of that is that learning itself has been fun. You've created a safe environment in which it's okay to learn, okay to fail. You've created clear expectations for them so that they know what they need to do to succeed, and they feel like they have the tools to support them to do so. Right? You've created a training process that feels supportive of their growth so that they can relax and actually enjoy what they're experiencing. It means that maybe I do different kinds of learning activities. So rather than just lecturing at them, we change it up. We have engaged activities. We do, kind of like physical activities. They do worksheets. They do journal exercises. They do group discussions. They do all of this kind of stuff so they can really have the learning from a lot of different spaces and stay engaged through the whole process. So just to summarize, how to keep your students motivated when you are facilitating trainings, consider the ARCS theory. ARCS. A for attention, get their attention. Oh my gosh, the first time I saw a dead body, right? R, relevance. This is important to you because. C, confidence, creating a space where they feel they can confidently take on the information. And S, satisfaction, making learning satisfying, making it fun. So those are the tips for now. You can check out my other videos. Please subscribe for more information. And also I have tons of information on my website, rachelyoga.com. Tons of stuff. So go check that out. Lots of free tips and resources and hints for you.